Today we're discussing something that affects everyone to varying degrees and at different times in our lives and at different stages in our careers. Today we're going to be talking about fear. Fear can hold you back from many opportunities if you don't learn to identify, acknowledge, and manage your fear. Failing to do so might even mean that you miss your golden opportunity even when you're in the right place at the right time. When stepping out of your comfort zone and venturing into unknown territory, feeling anxious or fearful is natural. This is especially true if your goal is something that is significant or has meaning to you. When the stakes are high, a little fear can be reasonable because acting without understanding the associated risks or without having adequate knowledge is just simply not smart. But even when you've done your calculations, when you've counted the cost of your decision to move forward and you've weighed up the risks, fear can hold you back. And that's what I want to talk to you about. When you move into new territory in your life, business or work, you need to have your wits about you. You need to be attuned to the environment to be ready to adjust your approach when it's needed. And this is where fear really works against you, because the issue with fear is that it turns your focus inward. It makes you self-aware. It narrows your focus, often to the exclusion of other essential factors. And what you focus on grows. And that's not just psychological mumbo-jumbo, it's backed by science. It's called experience-dependent neuroplasticity. Think about it like this. If you make a mark on a page, it'll probably be a faint mark, not easily noticed. But if you go over that mark several times a day, that mark will become darker and more prominent and more noticeable. It's the same with the neurons in our brains. Fear, anxiety, and caution are all standard parts of the human experience. But when we focus on them too much, we make the feeling more dominant in our brains. And it's not long before that translates into anxiety as a physical feeling in one's body. When consumed by fear and we're looking inwards, we don't focus on what is happening around us. And that's seriously unhelpful when what you want to do is be open to opportunities, focused on others, and listening intently for where you can identify your opportunity to create value. This self-awareness will mean that you can't effectively communicate your thoughts and ideas, and you can't defend your own point of view. You also won't be resilient and creative when it comes to handling objections to your particular perspective. Understanding your fear, knowing how to work around your fear or mitigate your fear and overcome your fear is directly linked to the likelihood that you'll be more effective in your personal and professional life. So let's look at some of the most common fears that I encounter in the work that I do. The most common fear is the fear of being wrong or the fear of being perceived as being wrong. Sometimes people are so afraid of being wrong that they never contribute anything at all. This fear was perhaps ingrained in us at school, where you put your hand up and you get the answer wrong, you get shot down or publicly corrected. But you're not at school anymore, and to grow, you will have to take risks, and I can guarantee you that at times you will be wrong. You're going to need to learn to get used to that. And when you get it wrong, and trust me, as I said, you will, resist the urge to be defensive. Instead, thank the other party for their feedback or acknowledge their perspective or point of view. And then give yourself time to reflect on what it is that they've had to say. There's a reason that they say that breakfast is the feedback of champions. The most successful people in the world don't get caught up in their mistakes. They learn fast and they move on. Then there's the less obvious but equally dangerous fear of not being enough. The fear of not being enough can be rooted in past experiences, personal insecurities, or familial pressures. The lie behind this fear is that if you're not skilled in a particular area, even if you invest effort and you learn and you work hard, that you're just never going to get there. This is what Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset in her book, Growth Mindset. I'll link to that in the description. According to Carol Dweck, a fixed mindset assumes that abilities and understanding are relatively fixed. In contrast, a growth mindset is the understanding that abilities and intelligence can be developed through putting in time and effort. Those with a growth mindset believe they can improve through effort, while those with a fixed mindset view those same traits as inherently stable and unchangeable over time. And what makes it even trickier is that you might have a fixed mindset in one area of your life and a growth mindset in another. For example, you may have a mental block about using AI technology to enable you in sales. You might have a growth mindset around sales psychology, your ability to grow in your knowledge of sales psychology, negotiation skills, objection handling, and pitching. It would help if you learned to identify where you're stuck with a fixed mindset and actively work to change your thinking in this area. Of course, I highly recommend reading the book. Now, a fear that has played out very strongly in my life is the fear of loss of approval. Not the fear of loss of just anyone's approval, but particularly people I've respected. And here's the irony. When you're working hard for people's approval, you seldom get it. People respect those who understand what they believe and why they believe what they believe. And when you're working so hard for other people's approval, we don't often understand what we believe because we're so focused on what they want and what we think they want that we change ourselves. Or to keep the peace and their approval, we put our own thoughts and ideas and needs aside until we can't handle it anymore, and inadvertently we escalate an issue or we lose our temper, often without the self-awareness to even know why we were so angry in the first place. It's essential to get to know yourself and identify your values, your perspectives, and your boundaries. Remember that aside from your closest family and friends, most of the people that you're working with will not be permanent features in your life. So don't make decisions that are going to change the course of your career based on the need for temporary approval. And then we have the fear of rejection. The fear of rejection is something that will definitely limit anybody's ability to sell, and it's at least one of the reasons why some people who would do very well in sales actually avoid it as a career. That and not wanting to act in a sleazy, pushy, or selfish manner, which of course is not what professional sellers do, but we'll talk about that another day. Rejection in business is seldom personal. Most often it's the rejection of an idea or a proposal, not the person presenting the idea or the proposal. And in many cases, it's not even that. It could just be a case of not the right time. If you have any grand ambitions for your life, your business, your sales career, the fear of rejection is something that you simply must learn to come to terms with. Now, how do you do that, you ask? You do the very thing that you fear. It's the frequent and repeated exposure to doing things that make you uncomfortable, that give you the confidence that you need to know that you can do it. I remember when I first began my speaking career in 2010, every time I stepped onto stage, I felt fear. Now, to put my journey in perspective, when I went into full-time training and speaking, I'd already had a career in sales that began in 1999. I had no fear of pitching multi-million rand deals to executives at boardroom level. I had spent nearly 5 years co-hosting a breakfast show on radio. When I started on radio, I was terrified, but after 5 years, trust me, I felt no fear in going on radio. And even with all of this experience behind me, I didn't expect to feel so much fear when I started speaking and training professionally. But I battled with genuine fear for the first 2 years at least. Finally, by repeatedly facing my fear, learning from my mistakes, and improving on my last performance, I reached the point where I'm now able to speak around the world to large audiences and to do so with calm confidence and not fueled by fear. Some say that fear gives you an advantage, that it gives you the edge. But do you think that Usain Bolt is consumed by fear when standing at the start of a big race? Do you think Serena Williams was riddled with anxiety every time she stepped onto a tennis court? Do you think Trevor Noah is fretting and stressing before delivering a stand-up comedy routine? Or that Jordan Peterson is overcome with anxiety when speaking to packed out venues? No. Over many years, they have prepared for those moments. They trust their preparation. They trust themselves and their ability to recover when things don't go as planned. In our next video, I'm going to give you some practical tips on how you can overcome your fears. But for today, let me leave you with this. Give yourself every chance of succeeding with adequate preparation. Trust yourself and in your ability to recover when things don't go as planned. Remember, you're a dial, not a switch. If If you don't get it right, you can learn and you can improve on your last performance. For more on how we can work with your team at the next sales conference, find our contact details in the description below this video. If you found today's video helpful and you'd like more of these tips, please do show us some love, hit subscribe, give us a like, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below.